we should be recording.
All right.
We're good.
Okay.
Are you going to do much of the podium? Or?
No, I'm not a stage walker.
All right, I'm listening on the Go ahead. Keep going.
All right. Thank you guys for waking up. It's bloody early. I know you're probably nursing hangovers, so let's get right to it. You want to light things on fire? Do you want to study electrical engineering without going to an expensive college? Want to turn your Wi-Fi up to 11? Want to have an excuse to play with disaster prep equipment without looking like a crazy person on a reality show? Do you want a cert that you can actually be proud of? If you answered yes to any of those questions, you might consider becoming a ham. I've been a ham since 2013, and it's been a wonderful and inexpensive way to start learning about security. I came to ham radio before I really got into security, and there's a lot of overlap in concepts. This was hacking before we had a word for it. Ham radio is the original hacking, and it's been a good way to connect with geeks of all ages. We've got a lot to learn from each other. Good way to serve my community and help out in disasters. And no, I don't mean security cons. Before I go any further, just a disclaimer. You might be wondering, do I really need a license to do amateur radio? I know we're a group that likes to bend the rules. Normally, I'd highly encourage that. However, in this case, yes, you do. There are people out there, believe it or not, who have nothing better to do all day than sit and listen and narc on illegal radio transmissions. So yes, pay $15 for a license or risk paying a $10,000 fine. Think of it this way. You can listen all you want. If you want to join in, that costs extra. Also, I cannot emphasize this enough. Don't fucking swear on the goddamn radio, assholes. So what do hackers have to do with ham radio? Well, there's already a lot of great InfoSec-related research being done out there, so I'm going to go through just a few recent examples. RFID, we've all seen it outside all of our hotel rooms here. What do you think the maximum range is that you can read an RFID tag at? Really short range, you gotta hold the card pretty close, 10, 20 feet, something like that. 5 years ago at Black Hat, Kristin Padgett, using just a directional antenna and a ham radio, read RFID tags at 500 feet. And she used only 1 watt of power to do this. And hams can use up to 1,500 watts of power. So remember when I said you could turn your Wi-Fi up to 11, I meant it. Now, don't use 1,500 watts of power to do that, because you can cook chicken with that. But Kristin estimated that on the 33 centimeter band, reading RFID tags with that much power, she could have had a 1 mile read range. One of the best talks ever regarding lighting things on fire. A girl felt interrupted at DEF CON and DerbyCon last year by MegaJauregui. This was an electrical engineer who got a ham radio license for the exclusive purpose of lighting things on fire. As a complete fluke, while talking on walkie-talkies, she discovered that she could trip the ground fault interrupt outlets in her bathroom, literally blow-drying her hair, getting ready for a date. So she got a ham radio license, and she was able to hone into precise frequencies, used a directional antenna called Yagi to make the solenoids in older GFCIs resonate, blew them up, literally started fires. And so, okay, blow dryers, they can start on fire, no problem. GFCIs are also in several medical devices. You know, dialysis machines, respirators. So basically, this has implications for remote kill. Fire, yeah. Blow dryer fire, that's fine. Respirator fire, not so fine. Speaking of hot things, Micah Scott, reversing the Lilo. She reverse engineered a high-end Swedish vibrator. It had a lackluster remote control, so she sniffed the radio transmissions between the remote and the vibrator, then made its range longer, stronger, and with sonar. And there's a lot of work out there like this. Basically, you know, I have this weird radio device that doesn't work very well. I need it to work better. So I reversed it, built a better one. And an understanding of how amateur radio transmissions works helps you do that. Speaking of tools, you need some tools to do this. So here are some things that hackers have made for radio hackery of all kinds. Has anyone seen the pink pager? been in the news a lot lately. The original project was Real Men and Women Carry Pink Pagers by Michael Osman and Travis Goodspeed. They turned this old $13 children's toy into a spectrum analyzer. The radio chip in it wasn't frequency locked. This is the I am me girl tech, so I read up a lot on it. My browser history now has girl tech in it. The frequency range overlaps with the 33 centimeter and the 70 centimeter ham bands, so it has a lot of applications. This pink pager was recently used in the garage door hack, Open Sesame. They were able to sniff the opening codes of garage door openers using this pager, and then they reprogrammed the openers. This just happened a couple of weeks ago. This is a really good example of taking someone else's obsolete technology and making it do your bidding, which is something that hams have been doing for decades. And this project gets used a lot in other work. I mentioned the garage door hack, and also Kristin Padgett used it in her long-range RFID talk. So there are also a lot of software-defined radios out there. Software-defined radio basically being where your computer stands in for separate hardware components like mixers and amplifiers, peripherals in general. So the holy grail of this is the hack RF on the left. It can transmit and receive anywhere between 10 megahertz and 6 gigahertz, which is pretty much all the frequencies you would ever hope to need. And it needs an amplifier for transmissions because it plugs into your computer, runs on USB power. So amplifying the power is a privilege, again, that only hams have because of power level regulations. So that's the hack RF. There's similarly the Ubertooth 1. These are both by Great Scott Gadgets, Michael Osman. This is a similar thing except for Bluetooth work. A lot of good Bluetooth work has come out of this toy. That's the hard. Here's the soft. These are just a few. There's a lot of good software out there for making your radio play easier. FLDigi is a software for digital modes. It's open source, but it's on SourceForge, so your mileage may vary. And it interprets digital signals into ASCII text and then can transmit text in digital modes. So you type something in an ASCII, it'll send it. You can send it out in Morse Code or in PSK31, anything, and receive and translate for you. So it's the cheat codes. Echolink is like a voice over IP style system for amateur radio stations. It connects repeaters all over. So like your repeater in Indianapolis could connect with the repeater in California. It's a series of tubes. And also Chirp, this will make your life so much easier if you do decide to become a ham radio operator. It is a very easy way to program radios using a USB to audio cable into your radio. In general, good for uploading and downloading information with several different kinds of radios. Without Chirp, a process that would normally take 5 minutes could end up taking hours. So why is there all of this interest? Unlicensed bands are unlicensed because they're so short range. The ISM bands, industrial, science, and medical, they're 900 megahertz, 2.4 gigahertz. They're very short range, so many radio things will assume they're the only thing on the band. And there are a ton of devices crowded around these bands, which overlap with the ham bands. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, XB, cordless phones, RFID. These are everywhere. Everything has a radio in it. All of your hotel rooms have, like I said, have a radio outside their door. And remember when we said you could read RFID at 500 feet? So it kind of works like having a secured area. They're in such a short range that they'll assume they're the only thing in the range on the band. They might not follow security protocols, but if you're in a secured area, you're supposed to be there, right? Anyone you talk to is also supposed to be there. No one has ever social engineered their way in. Unfortunately, unlicensed bands are not a secured area. Unlicensed spectrum is everywhere out there, and ham radio can pick up all of it. For a good example of this, good proof of concept, see the Party Mode Belt Buckle by Travis Goodspeed. Good write-up of that online. As you can see, the last one was a slide of all of the frequency allocations in the US for ham, for maritime, for military, all of that. Close-up of just one of the ISM bands, you can see how much shit is out there. So you might be wondering why the things on the ISM bands aren't encrypted. As far as amateur radio goes, Part 97 of the FCC rules states that it's illegal to obscure the content of a message so that someone listening can't ascertain the original meaning. Basically, encryption, not kosher. Digital modes, they're not encryption, they're just different communications protocols. Morse isn't encryption. PSK31 isn't encryption. So encrypted transmissions are illegal on amateur radio bands, except for communicating telemetry data with RC aircraft, and only on the RC aircraft bands, which are typically the upper part of HF, around 30 megahertz. Steganography, however, is more of a gray area. It's not encryption per se, it's just obfuscation. For good further reading on this, watch a talk from DEF CON last year by Brent Dukes and Paul Drapeau. They explore steganography in commonly used HF protocols. Good work on that. So, anyone want to become a ham? Wake up! Everybody stand up. Okay, now sit down. It's 10 a.m., for God's sakes. All right, I'm going to tell you how to become a ham. There are 3 license classes of amateur in the US. There's the technician, which is the basic level for everyone. The technician exam is easy by design. You get licensed so that you can learn your way around amateur radio, not vice versa. This is meant to be a very low barrier to entry. It's not a matter of learning all the things and then going and taking a test to prove that you know all the things. You get the license just so that you can play. They just want you to have basic common sense. And techs are restricted to VHF and UHF bands, which are above 30 megahertz. These are very short-range frequencies, so this just means that you can't cause an international incident. Anyone want to cause an international incident? All right, have I got the license for you? General is one up from technician, sort of like the junior varsity license. Sorry for the sports ball reference. This is like technician, except it has HF privileges below 30 megahertz, so you get a longer range of communications. It doesn't have privileges on all parts of the bands, but it takes you most of the way you need to go. The highest level is amateur extra, usually it's called extra. This gives you all privileges on all bands. And it also gives you international reciprocal operation. So this means you can take your radio to a different country that has an agreement with the US and operate there. Or Canada, I didn't mean to assume that everyone in the audience is American. And you can only do this if you have an extra license. I went to Norway last year and I couldn't operate because I was only a general at the time. And the extra exam it's hard. The jump between tech and general is a lot smaller than the jump between general and extra. But the number of extra licensees has increased dramatically since the Morse Code requirement was dropped in 2007. I still get asked about that even 8 years later. You don't need Morse Code anymore. So there are over 700,000 hams in the US, which is the most it's ever been. So rumors of its death have been greatly exaggerated. And the exams themselves, they may look dated. That's on purpose. It's a feature, not a bug. The exams are purposely very low tech so that they can be given anywhere at any time. They're all multiple choice, unlimited time exams. 35 questions for the tech in general, 50 for extra, so it's easier and more useful than a CISSP. Yep, and tech in general exams they cover rules, band plans, common sense, safety, very basic electronics. There are pretty much only 2 types of calculations you need to know. One has to do with frequency and wavelength. And so if you memorize the speed of light, which anyone know what the speed of light is? Fast, thank you. Well done. It's about 300 million meters per second. So if you get good at dividing 300 by things, you're fine. The other one is Ohm's law. Voltage equals current times resistance. I need more coffee. And the extra exam is more electronics heavy. Radio design, circuit theory, rules about being a volunteer examiner, which I'll get into more later. But again, it's been made a lot easier by the fact that there's no Morse code anymore. Lead balloon, all right. No love for the... So that doesn't mean, though, that Morse code has no use anymore just because it's been scrapped from the exam. It's actually quite useful. Morse is a lot more easily detectable than voice or data when signals are poor. Yeah, you can still do it. Many repeaters use Morse code for station identification, actually, and it also shows up a lot in CTFs and puzzles. For example, it's been a part of past DEF CON badge challenges, and there's a reason for this. I mean, it's good in a crisis. You can still remember the universal SOS. So to take the exams, the process is basically you walk in, give them $15, you take the test. Yes, $15, also cheaper than a CISSP. And if you pass, you can take the next one, then the next one after that. The exams need to be taken and passed in sequence. So even if you've done your studying for extra right away and think you're super elite, you need to take the technician first. You can't jump ahead. However, if you pass one, you can take the next one right away. So every now and then, people do go from 0 to hero, pass all 3 at once. Good for them. And your license fee is paid for that $15 for the first 10 years. So once you get your license, you'll be assigned a call sign. For an extra $15, you can go get a vanity call sign like mine. Sorry, N0OB is taken. You can even actually get a vanity license plate for your car with your call sign on it, and it's cheaper than normal vanity plates. Volunteer examiners also don't keep any portion of that exam fee. It all goes back to the FCC and the ARRL, which is the American Radio Relay League, the biggest volunteer exam coordinator. So volunteers work for free. To find an exam session, great way to do it is to get tested at a con. And actually tomorrow, we are going to be running amateur radio exams from 11 to 1. They don't take the full 2 hours. That usually you would spend maybe 15 to 30 minutes on an exam. But we got the time built in, so we'll be there. We'll be downstairs. And if you have questions between now and then, find me or find one of the other examiners. There are some other security cons holding exams coming up. B-Sides Las Vegas is going to have them this year for the first time ever, so that'll be fun in August. DEF CON's going to have them as well, hosted by DC 408. But if you don't want to get tested at a con, especially if you don't want to wake up early, most major cities will have at least one licensing session a month, so you can look on ARRL's website for local exam sessions in the area. If you're local to Indianapolis, Club Siberia, the hackerspace here, also runs them. So yeah, you should be able to find something. Studying for exams is where you can really find a wealth of information because all 3 question pools for all 3 levels are given away by the ARRL for free. So because they're free and open to the public, there's a lot of study material out there that's written by hams for hams. There are some good books. The ARRL publishes a series of very comprehensive exam prep books. They cover both the test material and just ham radio culture in general, which is great when you're starting out. Gordon West also makes study guides with the exam material in audiobook format, so you can study in your car on the way to work. And there are a ton of good online study guides and practice exams. In general, just Google amateur radio study guide. When I put my slides up online, I list a few at the end. I used hamstudy.org, and then you could track your progress, so you could go back and see what you needed to study, specific questions. A lot of them will also have explanations for the questions, so you don't just keep repeating your mistakes and not knowing why. There are also a lot of mobile apps out there for studying and practice tests for pretty much every platform, even Windows Phone, which is barely a platform. Just as an important warning, the question pools do change every 4 years on a rotation. General is going to change in July 2015. So just make sure that you're working with the most up-to-date question pool. Also, there are ham radio boot camps out there, in-person 1 to 2 day crash courses. Sometimes even shorter than that, actually. This afternoon at 2 o'clock, Justin Herman is leading a training, a tech prep class in, well, which room was it in? Oh, Congress 1 downstairs. So I'd highly recommend that. There's often a practice test at the end, or there's not a real test this one, take that tomorrow, but you can get a lot of good information pretty quickly. Club Siberia in Indianapolis also had boot camp classes. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, and my own study process varied a lot for each of the 3 exams. When I was preparing for the technician exam, I used the ARRL book more. Being new to ham radio, I found it really helpful to have context for the exam material, because like I said, it talks about the culture, talks about daily practices. For general, 2 months later, I spent a little longer and just focused on the test material more than the ham radio culture. By the time I got to extra, I basically memorized the question pool just by taking at least 1 practice test a day and tracking my progress. I knew that there were large portions of the exam that I would probably never have to use in real life, and I was right, except I can still tell you how to calculate resonance and what vestigial sideband is. I don't know what that pushed out of my brain, but I'm scared for when I find it. So once you have that license, what do you do now? Step 1, get a radio. There are a lot of options out there. Ham radio, this is the beauty of it. It's only as expensive as you want it to be. A good HT, which is a handheld transceiver or handy-talkie, starts around $30. This is the $30 one you see in the picture, the Baofeng UV5R. It's great. It's a good starter radio. HTs vary greatly in price depending on features such as frequency range and maximum power. For example, the only difference between these two basically is that this one's max power is 4 watts, this one's 8 watts, and this one's frequency range is slightly wider. Ham radio operators do it with more frequency. So you don't need all the fancy, some people are total gearheads, but you don't need the fanciest of the fanciest. You don't need a radio that does everything. The radio that you take out with you into the Daystar needs to be a radio that you aren't afraid to lose, break, or spill beer on. I have, and you will. And HT lets you talk to people at cons, join ARIES, which I'll get to in a moment, and generally just explore. And most HTs are dual band, VHF and UHF. But even if you're an extra, that's probably where you're going to be spending your time, even if you have privileges to lower bands. This is where your local hams are. This is where most of the repeaters are. These are shorter frequencies. Also, I mentioned chirp before. If you get a radio, get a programming cable to go with it. It'll make your life a lot easier. If you're ambitious and good with a soldering iron, you can also build your own radio. A good place to start is the Soft Rock Kit. This is an $80 SDR, gives you access to several HF bands. And the comic is unfortunately only a slight exaggeration of how many parts come in a box. It's a lot, but it is, if you are so inclined, it's a very good way to learn how a radio is constructed. And that's true of anything. Good way to learn how something works is to build it, not just to take it apart. Once you have a radio, go crazy. Do all kinds of things. See how many times you can answer the standard hacker question, what can I make this thing do? There's a lot of pushing the limits of what your radio can do. DXing, which is long distance communications, often international. And you can get QSL cards from people all over the world, hams all over the world. QSL is Acknowledged Receipt of Transmission. People do all kinds of contesting. There are wireless CTFs. There's contacting as many stations as possible within a given time. QRP, which is using 1 watt of power or less and seeing how much you can squeeze out of that 1 watt. Fox hunting. Was anyone at B-Sides Las Vegas last year? You see the people wandering around with laptops and antennas. That's what they were doing. They were fox hunting as part of the wireless essentials class, sniffing out radio beacons. And also, on that note, bring your radio to cons. It's a really good back channel there, and many cons do have a wireless village or a wireless CTF, so go be their friend. Check them out. Space. You can talk to space. Anyone know what EME stands for? Earth-Moon-Earth propagation. You can bounce signals off of the moon. It's not just a sci-fi thing, it's science fact. There are also a lot of amateur satellites, so you can even talk with the International Space Station. The astronauts there are hams. Just don't make it go sideways. You can make drones go sideways, though. Drones, you will get better range and control with amateur radio-controlled drones. Greater range of frequency, more power. Yeah, amateur drones. They can go sideways. Step 3, nonprofit. You can join ARIES, which is Amateur Radio Emergency Services. This has been one of the most fun things I've done since becoming ham. So when natural disasters hit, the first thing that happens is all of the cell towers die. Or in the case of public safety incidents like Boston Marathon bombing, the cell towers are overwhelmed. And the cell towers die in natural disasters because they're built on the most exposed places. And they also have police and fire and EMS radios on them. So in these disasters, ARIES teams will step in to provide emergency communications to cities, counties, states, the Red Cross, and other volunteer organizations. And to practice, we do radio communications at public service events like marathons, bike races, parades, and other scheduled disasters as practice for the real thing. In the case of the Boston Marathon bombing, a practice event actually turned into a real emergency deployment for hams. So it's good that they were present. Even if you never end up helping out in an emergency, it's a really good way to learn about operating and to connect with the local ham radio community, because you do it together. Sorry, it's very dry in here. Also, pay it forward. Make more hams. I like that. If you have a general license or above, you can get certified to be a volunteer examiner. Generals can administer technician exams, and extras can give all 3 levels. That's a big incentive of why people become extras, because like I said, there's a lot of stuff on the exam that doesn't apply to real life. But it does let you volunteer for all people. And with any level of license, you can also become a volunteer license instructor, so you can teach those boot camp classes, or you can be an online course mentor. They have online versions of the boot camps, so you can help people out. In general, have fun. Thank you very much. You're a saint. Oh, that's good vodka. I mean, what? So in general, there's a lot, learn from old hams and have fun with it. There's a well-established culture of teaching and mentorship, which is something that's very familiar to the security community as well. Many old hams will have a really good stockpile of radio gear that they'll let you play with. You should take your exam tomorrow because the last Sunday in June is annual Field Day, which is a nationwide ham radio event. Everyone goes outside, plays with radio things. It offers a great deal of opportunities for exploration, experimentation. But it's good. It's a community because ham radio is necessarily predicated on communication with at least one other person. And I love it. It offers a very low barrier for entry into a world of hacking, and there are a lot of reasons for this. Like I said, the cost is low, and so that makes it accessible to more people. There's less gatekeeping, there's less questioning of credibility, because you do have that piece of paper, so someone can't say, well, you don't really know. Well, no, I have an extra just like you, just haven't been doing it as long. It's definitionally a hobby, not a profession. So you take away all that hustle and flexing and trying to prove yourself, and all that's left is a passion for playing with technology and sharing knowledge. And that's pretty cool. There's always more to explore. I've learned a lot from the hams that came before me, and we're keeping it alive. There's always more to explore, and not nearly enough people are playing with it. So, for InfoSec or otherwise. So it lets you keep that hacking knowledge alive, and it's a great way to interact with the technology around you, people around you. So, practice safe RF, get tested. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah. Yeah, everyone's got their something. I enjoy being a member of ARIES, Amateur Radio Emergency Services. I don't know, I like doing volunteer stuff, and it's fun. It gets you out into the open. I did a bike race last year, and that was fun. They feed you, and we had a tornado last year in Madison where ARIES wasn't deployed, but I felt like we were going to, and I lost power, and I was simultaneously kind of scared because I was in my bathroom and there was a tornado somewhere, and I was like, ooh, radio. So, although the local ARIES team hasn't been deployed in my county for a real emergency in 10 years, I like it. It's a way to be able to give back to the community in a way that well, anyone can, but not everyone does, and not everyone can, and I like that about it. And it's also going to be helpful it's been a way for me to apply the knowledge of radio to learning about security. Unlike a lot of you who are probably security professionals who don't know as much about radio, I learned about radio first and got interested in security next, and so being able to sort of make that connection, it has been helpful for me. So, others?
You said on the test it's 30 questions. What's the pass ratios?
35 questions for tech in general, 50 for extra. The pass rate is 74% is the minimum pass rate. So you need 37 on extra to pass and 27 on the others to pass.
In some industries like information security, there are people that take tests and then think that they're qualified to do penetration testing or things like that. Do you find that people take the test and then are fully prepared to, I mean, in general, of course, are fully prepared to actually, be on the radio, or is there the passing the test and then a bunch of mentorship and other things that have to happen?
Like I said, the test is, especially the first level, is kind of easy by design. They want to get you that basic level so that you can start playing around with it. But I got on the radio right after my license was approved, and I just started listening and started playing around. And I mean, again, because it's a hobby, there's less defined, like, what is a qualification. I mean, some people have been doing this for decades, and they're usually very eager to teach new people. But yeah, I would say pretty much when you're licensed, you can start playing around right away. There's not a huge amount of learning, of hands-off learning that needs to take place. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm sure if you knocked on your door and talked to them, they'd be happy to take you in and show you their rig, show you their ham shack. And if you see somebody with a giant-ass antenna on their car, it's probably the same deal. I wish I lived in a place where I could do that, but I'm moving into a historical building and they don't let you put antennas up. Yeah.
So, kind of follow on his, not all the hands, like if you knock on the door, one of the things you can do is basically messaging, which is kind of thinking of a telegraph system with a radio. And I used to deliver a lot of messages when I first got into it. I wanted to use taking messages and passing around. I used to drive to people's houses and knock on the door. I actually had one of people with his hand. Tell you who you want. I'm just like, I'm here to deliver your message.
Glad I don't live in your neighborhood.
But for the most part, they're friendly. And then they start asking you questions like, wow, I've never seen a phone like that, or I get that. Other times it's like, get out of here.
Yeah, they're on the whole friendly group. Sorry, I forgot to ask, can people hear each other asking questions, or should I repeat them? You can hear each other. Okay, great. Yeah? You had a hand raised? Okay. All right. Anyone else? Okay, well, again, thank you so much for getting up early. I know it's painful, but I'm glad you did, and I hope you will take this opportunity to look at some of the other radio offerings here, and feel free to find me, flag me down at any time if you have any more questions. I would be more than happy to talk your ear off, even though I talked really fast right now. So thanks for coming. And again, I'll put resources up online.